as we continue looking at the life of Samuel, and today Saul becomes king. Good idea or bad idea? We know it's a bad idea. And how many times will we as Christian, as God people, have bad ideas and choose to follow those bad ideas? But we're going to see today how God, first of all, knew we were going to make those bad decisions. He will remind them why it's a bad decision, but at the same time, he has a plan for even making our bad decisions a success. Isn't that nice to know? At no point is it like, okay, I've made that mistake, so there's no turning back now. It's just all downhill from here. No, it doesn't have to be. If we're willing to follow, he will lead us no matter what detours we decide to take. And that's what we're going to see today. We're going to see as God does not give up on his people, Samuel, as God's prophet, does not give up on his people, right? So let's take a look at it. Let's remind ourselves last week. Let's all go to 1 Samuel chapter 10 and remind ourselves of what we saw last week. And if you will recall, Saul was out looking for some lost donkeys. His father had lost them. And he was out there and could not find them. Got so far out, they had no food left. They had nothing left. So Saul was going to give up. We got to go home, or else they're going to start looking for us, which they were, by the way. The donkeys had come back, and now they were, what happened to Saul, right? But then his servant said, oh, there's a guy here. We all know about the Samuel guy, right? He's a man of God. Let's go. I've got 64 cents. Let's go talk to him, and maybe he knows. But who was already waiting for him? Samuel was already waiting for Saul. God had already told Samuel, the king's coming tomorrow. Be ready for him. And was Samuel ready? Yeah, all right, feast ready, special things ready. And on chapter 10, verse 1, what did Samuel do? Then Samuel took a vial of oil and poured it upon Saul's head and kissed him and said, is it not because of the Lord hath anointed thee to be captain over his inheritance? So now, is Saul king? No. This is like David. David's going to be anointed when he's just a little squirt. Not king yet, right? But he's anointed to be the king, right? Chosen. In fact, after he gives him all the signs that Saul would know that he's chosen. And by the way, did all the signs come true? Very specific signs. What everybody was carrying, what he would be given, where he would be when these things happen. God is always very specific, by the way. When he wants you to know, you will know, right? Look at verse 8. And thou shalt go down before me to Gilgal, and behold, I will come down unto thee to offer burnt offerings and to sacrifice sacrifices of peace offerings. 7 days shalt thou tarry till I come to thee and show thee what thou shalt do. And it is in fact that then he will become the king, the undisputed king of Israel. But we got to go through some stuff first, okay? And Saul, first of all, goes home from all of this and tells who? Nobody. It doesn't tell anybody what Samuel told him. All he told him is, well, Samuel told us that the donkeys were okay and to go home. That's all he said, right? But then Samuel says, let's get everybody together. So let's start tonight's. And first of all, we have the choosing of Saul. Chapter 10, verse 17. And Samuel called the people together unto the Lord to where? I thought we were going to Gilgal. Not yet. Got to do this first. So they're going to go to Mitzvah. And he's going to call all the people together. Verse 18. And said unto the children of Israel, thus saith the Lord God of Israel. So again, Samuel's job is to tell the people what? God's word. Okay, keep this in mind for your own life. They don't need to hear Samuel's opinion on the matter. Doesn't need to hear what Samuel thinks. He is there to do whose job? God's job and tell them what God says. And what does God say? I brought up Israel out of Egypt, correct? Yep. And delivered you out of the hands of the Egyptians, correct? And out of the hand of all kingdoms. Is that correct? The Amalekites, the Ammonites, all the people who attacked them along the way. Brought them all the way through, delivered them from everybody. And even conquered the land, right? And of them that oppressed you. And he's done that over and over again. By the way, in their recent history, during the time of the judges, why were they ever oppressed? Because of their sins. But every time they called upon him, was he there for them? And did he do it and deliver them? So, has God been good to them? Yes. In fact, does God deserve to be their king? Is he a good king? The best. By the way, in your life, what has God done for you? Has he delivered you from the oppression, delivered you from slavery, delivered you from sin, delivered you from so many things? Who did those things? God did those things. So does he deserve to be king in your life? Do we sometimes make dumb decisions and make other things in charge? Yeah, that doesn't go well. Verse 19, and you have this day rejected your God, who himself saved you out of all your adversities and your tribulations, and you have said unto him, nay, but set a king over us. So God's just relaying back. Here's the facts, right? I was great. You were not so good, but I remained great. I've always delivered you, but now you say you want a king, so? Will God do that sometimes to us? If you want to make a bad decision, I will let you make the bad decision. In fact, I will help you through that bad decision. And that's the good part, isn't it? There's no decision where it's like, okay, well, now God has abandoned me. Right? He will help us through. And that's what we're going to see tonight. He's still going to help them through all of this. And he's going to start by choosing their king. Now, therefore, present yourselves before the Lord by your tribes and by your thousands. So, everybody get in your groups. Can you even imagine? Think of 2 million people. Okay, everybody, first of all, get into tribes. So, I don't know. They have flags. Well, I don't know what they had, standards or something. How do you even know? What group am I in? What group am I in? But somehow they got them into tribes, and then basically by families and by thousands, and got everybody organized. Okay? They can do that. So they can't follow the Lord, but they can get organized, evidently. And when Samuel had caused all the tribes of Israel to come near, the tribe of Benjamin was taken. Can you imagine? I got organized like this, and they don't even choose me. Plus, who do you think was going to be chosen? If you were one of the tribes, who are you thinking?
Well, you assume it's going to be Judah.
I think it's going to be Judah, right?
Because it was the promise.
The promises and stuff, Judah. So if you're sitting there, you're Judah, you're like, all right, we got this. And all of a sudden they say, Benjamin. Who's freaking out right now? First of all the other 11 is like, we almost wiped those guys out. Those guys are terrible. They're the smallest, weakest, most immoral group we've got. You kidding me? You're choosing them? Who else do you think's freaking out? Benjamin's probably all like, who's freaking out the most, though? The only other guy who knows who Samuel's going to choose. And that's Saul. In fact, let's keep going. Verse 21. When he had caused the tribe of Benjamin to come near by their families, the family of Matri was taken, and Saul, the son of Kish, was taken. And when they sought him, he could not be found. Because he's like, I don't want to be. Now, when you are as taller than everybody else, it's hard to hide. But somehow, I got to give him credit. He must be the best at hide and seek of anybody. Because they literally, nobody could find him. Nobody could find Saul. When you're that big, they couldn't find him, and they could not. So much so that they had to do the what? Verse 22. Therefore they inquired of the Lord. Said, Lord, where's our king? Where's this one that you have chosen to lead us? We cannot find him. If the man should yet come thither. And the Lord answered, behold, he hath hid himself among the stuff. So you got to think, that many people, there's a lot of supplies and things like that, and he's hiding. I always get the picture of him hiding in a barrel. I don't know why. Just kind of cramped himself in there. It's like an old pickle barrel or something. He's just kind of hanging out in there. And so they go to the stuff, and they all look around, and guess what they find? A 6'8" guy, some in that neighborhood. Verse 23, and they ran and fetched him thence, and when he stood among the people, he was higher than any of the people from his shoulders and upward. And Samuel said to all the people, see you him whom the Lord hath chosen, that there is none like him among all the people. And all the people shouted and said, God save the king. It's exciting, isn't it? But I want you to notice something. Who chose? In fact, who made it so the people understood completely he is choosing? He had Samuel bring everybody together. He's the one through Samuel got him on. In fact, they had to go to God to find out where he was. So who is it very clear is making this choice? So even though, has God abandoned his people? Has he said, well, if you want a king, you go find your own king. You want a king, you do it. I don't want anything to do with the stupid decision you're making. No, he's like, okay, you want to make a stupid decision? I'll help you. I'll still help you. And I will get somebody for you. And who did they get? Saul. And they all rejoiced to have a king and said, God save the king. Now, here's the interesting part. Verse 25. Then Samuel told the people the manner of the kingdom and wrote it in a book and laid it up before the Lord. And Samuel sent all the people away, every man to his house. Before they left, he wrote down how the king was supposed to operate. What are the rules for a king? What are the rules for God's people run by a king? Now, where would he get such things? Anybody looking at the board? Deuteronomy. Did you know this? In God's law that Moses gave to his people before they even went into the land, his law had rules for having a king. What did God know? That they would have a king, that they would choose a king. In fact, let's go take a look at it. It's kind of funny. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 17. How smart is God? Deuteronomy chapter 17. So again, this is before they even go into the land, before the times of the judges. Way before all of that, he has Moses say this. When thou art come unto the land which the Lord thy God gives you, and shalt possess it, and shalt dwell therein, and shalt say, I will set a king over me, like as all the nations that are about me. Does God know our weaknesses? Does he know the dumb things we're going to do? Yes. In fact, he wrote down what he's supposed to do. Verse 15. Thou shalt in any wise set him a king over thee, whom the Lord thy God shall choose. First rule is, you don't put the king unless God chooses the king. How are we doing so far? Who chose the king? God chose the king. One from among thy brethren shalt thou set king over thee. Thou mayest not set a stranger over thee, which is not thy brother. That makes sense. You wouldn't want a foreigner sitting on the throne who doesn't even believe in God. You want people of your own brethren who don't believe in God sitting on the throne. No, that's for later. 16. But he shall not multiply horses to himself, nor cause the people to return to Egypt, to the end that he should multiply horses. For as much as the Lord hath said unto you, you shall henceforth return no more that way. So he can't go looking to Egypt for power, for strength. Now, are we going to have some kings later on in their history that are going to do that? The answer is yes. Were they supposed to? No, not supposed to do that. And again, not build up such a great army that you're trusting in yourself to protect you. Who is going to protect his people? God. Put your trust in him. Verse 17, neither shall he multiply wives to himself. Anybody come to mind who broke that one? I put David there too, but Solomon.
Solomon actually says twice in the Bible that he went to Egypt for horses.
Yes.
Specifically.
Absolutely.
Which is crazy.
And multiplied many wives.
And he's the wise king.
He's the wise one, yeah. That his heart turn not away, because he knows if they're marrying a bunch of wives, a lot of them are going to be from other countries and other traditions, and they will turn the heart away. Did Solomon read the book that Samuel wrote? Evidently not. Did he read the information that Moses wrote down? Evidently not. Or if he read it, he just like, that doesn't apply to me, as we talked about this morning. For as much as the Lord has said, you shall henceforth, verse 17. Neither shall he greatly multiply to himself silver and gold. So now it'll be about the money and stuff like that. And it shall be, when he sitteth upon the throne of his kingdom, that he shall write him a copy of this law in a book, out of that which is before the priests and the Levites. So he needs to know the law. I always get the picture that actually means his job is, first of all, to write it out. I don't know how many kings did that, but write it out. That's what I would have everybody do. Wouldn't it be great if every president of the United States sat down and had to write out the Constitution? It's like, hey, at least you know what the rules are, right? If you wrote it down once. 18. And it shall be with him, and he shall read therein all the days of his life, constantly reading the law, so he knows how he's supposed to govern, and that he may learn to fear the Lord his God, to keep all the words of this law and these statutes, to do them, that his heart be not lifted up above his brethren, and that he turn not aside from the commandment to the right hand or to the left. Remember, Moses told that to the people too. Don't turn to the left, don't turn to the right, right? Stay with the word. To the end that he may prolong his days in his kingdom, he and his children in the midst of Israel. Do this and you will do what's right. So that's probably at least some of what Samuel wrote down. He may have written down more of the law and things like that. But did God already know this was going to happen? Did he already know their tendencies when they became king? Yes. But he also has said, when you get a king, what are they going to do? They're going to multiply themselves horses. They're going to take your servants. They're going to tax you. They're going to take your stuff and multiply them into gold and silver. And right? He knows what they're going to do, but still is he warning them. And he had it written down here, and Samuel wrote it down. So, whose choice? God's choice. Whose rules? God's rules. He hadn't abandoned them. He's making sure they know the rules. Not only that, let's go back to 1 Samuel again. Chapter 10, verse 26. So in end of verse 25, Samuel sends all the people home. Everybody get on home. Nothing more to see here. It's all done. Got a king now. Go. Go. And where does Saul go, though? Do they have a castle somewhere? They got a throne room? They got anything? They don't have anything like that. They have no place for him. So where do you think he goes? He goes home. Goes home. Verse 26. And Saul also went home to Gibeah. And there went with him a band of men whose hearts God had touched. Did God send him home empty-handed? No. He sent him with people that he chose to help him. Help protect him, help guide him, help whatever, help in any way. He sent him home with help. And do we all need a little bit of that? So yeah. So how's God doing? Does this look like a God that's abandoned them? No. Does this look like a God who wants them to succeed in this bad decision? Yeah. But it requires them to recognize who's making the choices. God is. Who sets the rules? God does. Who provides the help? God does. Even when we make a bad decision, if we come back to God, can God still make it work? Yeah. And that's what he's doing. And Samuel, is he going along with it? Yeah, he's not bad-mouthing anybody. He's not saying, I can't believe you picked this guy. He's not saying any of that. He's like, hey, I'm here. God says, let's do this. Let's do this. But there are, as always, naysayers. Right? The election was rigged. How dare you choose a Benjaminite? We'll never have him as our king. And that's verse 27. And what does God call them? But the children of Belial. They are natural disruptors. They said, absolutely not. How shall this man save us? This man who was hiding amongst the stuff. This man with no experience, no following from the smallest of the tribes, no real influence. How can he possibly save us? And what's the answer to that question, by the way? He can't. But the one who chose him can. The one who gave him the rules can, if he follows them. And the one who will provide him the help can, right? But they're like, forget it. And they despised him and brought him no presents. But to Saul's credit, what did he do? He held his peace. He didn't get angry. Didn't say, hey, band of men, go dispatch those people. Let them know. No, he's like, okay. They want to be naysayers. Okay, that's fine. We'll move forward. In fact, he went home, and what do you think he did when he got home? Went to work. Working in the fields. This is actually kind of similar to who? To David. Anointed early, and then later on is just mostly doing what? Doing his job when the call finally comes. Because he isn't officially with the offerings and everything the king yet. Okay? He's been anointed. He's been presented. But we're not really going to see this is the king until we get to where? Samuel's already said. Gilgal. All right? So what happens next? Chapter 11. Basically, a situation is going to come up that's going to force Saul to show his stripes to the people. And that's going to happen in chapter 11. Then Nahash, the Ammonite, came up and encamped against Jabesh Gilead. And all the men of Jabesh said unto Nahash, make a covenant with us, and we will serve you. So if you want a map of this, here's Sea of Galilee, Jordan, Salton Sea. Jabesh Gilead is on this side, so it is on the east side of the Jordan, in the area of Manasseh, and Benjamin's down this area. So quite a ways away. It's kind of on the other side of Jordan. It's over there. And who do you think owns this land out here? The Ammonites, who they took that land from, by the way, when they came into the land. So it's over here. And they came and surrounded the city. And so the men of Jabesh were like, we don't want to fight. You will destroy us. So let's make a deal. Want to see the deal? Verse 2. And Nahash the Ammonite answered them, on this condition will I make a covenant with you, that I may thrust out your right eyes and lay it for reproach upon all Israel. Why the right eye? Yeah. So let's take out the right eyes, and it's like they're going to lay them out for all of Israel to see. And that's the part that really gets me. I mean, yeah, it's tough, everybody losing an eye, but who are they really making fun of here? That's a reproach on Israel. And if it's a reproach on Israel, it's a reproach on who? The God of Israel, right? So, give us the right eye. Now, Jabesh Gilead says, now, I don't know if this was normal back then, but this is very strange to me. How many agree Ammonites have the upper hand here? Yeah. Jabesh Gilead comes back with a counteroffer. And the elders of Jabesh said unto him, give us 7 days respite. Just hold on for 7 days. That we may send messengers unto all the coasts of Israel. And then if there be no man can save us, we will come out to thee. What? That makes no sense if you're the Ammonites. It's like, I've got you beat. Hold on. Can you give us a few days to get reinforcements? And what does Nahash say? Okay. Yeah. And they said, evidently, okay. Verse 4. Then came the messengers to Gibeah of Saul and told the tidings in the ears of the people, and all the people lifted up their voices and wept. So they all came down and said, Saul, we were at Mizpah. God chose you to be king. Let's all go down there. This message has come from Jabesh Gilead. They've got 7 days, or they all lose their right eyes and come under the Ammonites. What do we do? Well, what do they do? Verse 5, and behold, Saul came after the herd out of the field. So what was Saul doing? Tending to the herd. He was just doing his job, going about it. And he notices. And Saul said, what aileth the people that they weep? And they told him the tidings of the men of Jabesh. And the Spirit of God came upon Saul. Has God abandoned his people? Has God abandoned Saul? No. God is with him. In fact, whose power is this going to be? This is by God's power. And Saul stands up and says, and his anger was kindled greatly, and he took a yoke of oxen and hewed them in pieces. I would hate to be a mailman back then. In the few stories we've seen over the last few weeks, this is now the second one that has some kind of bloody parts being shipped all over the nation. It's like, is this a thing? I guess it was a thing. You just send slaughtered things to everybody to show how terrible and serious this is. That's what he did. So he took the yoke of oxen and hewed them in pieces and sent them throughout the coast of Israel by the hands of messengers, saying, whosoever cometh not forth after Saul and after who? Samuel. It's Saul and Samuel. They're lockstep, right? Again, this isn't just the king. This is also the prophet. These are God's people who are calling you. This is God calling you. So shall it be done unto his oxen. So if you don't come, we're going to come slaughter all your oxen. And the fear of the Lord fell on the people, and they came out with one consent. And I love that part. Not the fear of Saul, not the fear that their oxen are going to be killed, but the fear of who? The Lord. The Lord has called us to this. Let us all. And they all came. Verse 8. And when he numbered them in Bezek, the children of Israel were 300,000. And the men of Judah, 30,000. I want you to note that. They were already separating these two. It was always Israel, the other tribes, and Judah, because they were so much bigger. 330,000. Is that a lot? Yeah, I don't care who you are. 330,000 armed men is a lot. And that's by the power of who? This is the power of God. Power of God coming upon Saul to make this request in this way. And then the fear of the Lord came upon them, because this was a message from Saul and God's prophet Samuel. And they went out and they all came. Verse 9. And they said unto the messengers that came, thus shall you say unto the men of Jabesh Gilead, tomorrow, by that time the sun be hot, you shall have help. And the messengers came and showed it to the men of Jabesh, and they were, of course, ecstatic. But this is quite a ways. And they had to go basically by noon tomorrow, we will be there. So they got to go. They got to go. They got to march these 330,000 people and drive and go and get there. But he promised, and did they make it? We'll find out next week. No, just kidding. Verse 10. Therefore the men of Jabesh said, tomorrow we will come out unto you, and you shall do with us all that seemeth good unto you. Who's he telling that to? Well, he's telling that to the people Ammonites. Because they're like, hey, don't worry, tomorrow we'll come out to you. So what are the Ammonites doing? Are they ready for battle? Now, I think this is a little dirty poker myself. You know what I mean? They gave them 7 days. I thought that was fair to go get some reinforcements. Now reinforcements are coming. What did Jabesh Gilead do? Reinforcements aren't coming. I think it's a little unfair, but that's my own opinion. It's what happened. Verse 11, and it was so on the morrow that Saul put the people in 3 companies, and they came into the midst of the host in the morning watch, and slew the Ammonites unto the heat of the day. And it came to pass that they which remained were scattered, so that 2 of them were not left together. They utterly blew them apart, and they all just started running, so that not even 2 were left together. Poor Ammonites. Don't say poor Ammonites. They're terrible people. And the people said unto Samuel, who is he that said, shall Saul reign over us? They're already thinking back to when. These guys. We like this Saul guy. He just came up and saved this city. God is with him. Who were those people? Let's take care of those people. Let's get them out here. Make them responsible for this, right? In fact, he said, bring the men that we may put them to death. Got a little taste of blood there, don't they? A little bloodthirsty. But what did Saul say? And Saul said, there shall not a man be put to death this day. You see the heart of Saul here, don't you? Did God choose the right guy? I know you know the rest of the story. You know what happens later. But still, where was his heart? He kind of went bad.
Mad.
And went mad when the Lord took the blessings away. He went mad.
Yeah.
But even then, before that, yes, he made some mistakes. Yes, he didn't listen. Yes, we're going to see that. And Samuel's going to have to deal with that. But you can actually see his heart here. In fact, look what he says next. For today, the Lord has wrought salvation in Israel. Whose power? Whose victory was this? See, he didn't make the kingship all about him, did he? This wasn't Saul's victory. This wasn't Samuel's victory. This is whose victory? This is God's victory. And yeah, there were some naysayers, but, they were aimed at me. But I'm just the vessel of God. I'm not the one who won today, so no, we're not going to kill anybody. This is the Lord's victory. This is a day of salvation. So let's all just come together, right? Isn't that a nice thing? And Saul did the right thing. And Samuel, who was there the whole time, by the way, because he said earlier, the people said to Samuel, let's kill everybody. But it also happened next, verse 14. Then said Samuel to the people, come and let us go to where? Gilgal, and renew the kingdom there. Let's establish this with the offerings, with everything. So let's all get there. And how many days is it going to be? Well, according to earlier, it'll be 7 days. Go there, and in 7 days I'll be there, and we'll do the burnt offering. Now, Gilgal is very important. I always like patterns. Gilgal is where, it's right outside Jericho, by the way. So Gilgal is a place that Joshua used for his main camp. So when they came in and destroyed Jericho, it was in Gilgal that Joshua kind of set up his camp. In fact, it's where the Gibeonites came down and said, oh, we've come from such a long way. Oh, look at our moldy bread and everything. That was like Gilgal did that. It was at Gilgal that they split the kingdom after they had finished conquering the land, and they came and drew lots to see which tribe will get what lands. In fact, it first started with Caleb. I love Caleb. What land do you want, Caleb? I'll give you anything. What did Caleb say? Who's like 90 something at that point? What did he say? Where are the giants? I want the land with the giants. I want to take them. I've been here before. I got some. I'm going to take them out. He did. He and his sons took them out, drove them out of that land. But that's where he did it. Was at Gilgal. So Gilgal kind of was the conquered land area that Joshua established as central area. Now we're going to see later on. It's also at Gilgal that Saul doesn't wait 7 days to do the sacrifice and gets into a lot of trouble. It's also at Gilgal that he was supposed to kill the king, Agag, and didn't kill the sheep and stuff, where Samuel came and said, hey, if you killed everything, why do I hear bleeding sheep? So Gilgal is a central spot, and it's at Gilgal that the kingdom will be established. And that's what they did in verse 15. And all the people went to Gilgal. So messages went out to everybody. Go home, then come back. Everybody gather at Gilgal. And there they made Saul king before the Lord in Gilgal. And there they sacrificed sacrifices of peace offerings before the Lord. And there Saul and all the men of Israel rejoiced greatly. Including who? Those sons of Belial, the naysayers. Because it clearly says all of the people got behind Saul then. Not because of Saul, not because of anything he did, but because who was with him? Who chose him? God. Whose rules? God's. Who was providing help? Whose power was on him? Who gives the victory? God does. And frankly, if Saul would have remembered this, he would have been fine. And it would have been established, but he forgets these things. And sometimes we all do that, don't we? We'll remember for a while, then we forget what we're doing. When is God going to give up on his people, though? Never. They're going to cause themselves some harm, but he's never going to give up on them, right? So we see here this start, and Samuel is now the prophet of a king, the first prophet for a king. And we'll see now, how does he deal with a king that makes mistakes? How does he deal with a king that's going to disobey? And how does he bring in? What's his attitude toward him? Because again, if you're Samuel at this point, you're kind of just waiting for it, aren't you? And I'm always amazed that Samuel at some point just doesn't say, man, you should have just had me. Should have just kept going with me as judge. Should have been me. But he never does that. He never does that. And we can't do that either, can we? Don't get judgy. Just know that we all make mistakes and we all do bad things, and there is consequences. But even in the consequences, do we need to have compassion? And that's what we're going to look at in Samuel's life. Does he have that kind of compassion and love for people, even in Saul's situation? Okay? All right. Any questions about Saul becoming king of Israel? The first king chosen by God. And I must say it that way. Read Judges if you're not sure why I say it that way. There was a self-proclaimed king earlier, but he did not last long. So, all right, let's pray.